Hello, okay, so for today's video I'm going to get straight into the painting. For anyone that hasn't seen my videos before, my name's Bella Edgley and I'm an artist based in the south of England, and my channel is all about using watercolour in a contemporary and experimental way. So for today's video I've actually taken a little bit of a break from painting because there's been a holiday, and I'm always trying to work out ways to incorporate trees into my landscapes, but to keep them quite sort of abstract as well. So I thought it would be a good opportunity straight off the bat to just try and do a painting where I am experimenting with this. And I could have done this in my sketchbook, but I decided to do it on a piece of paper in case I like the finished result. And what I'm doing is I'm really using a mix of wet in wet and wet on dry. So where I've got the wet on wet, the trees, the edges are very blurred, and then where I do the wet on dry, the edges of the trees are a bit harder, and I'm just trying to really hold my brush quite loosely to see how I can get these sort of a real feel for the solid nature of trees, but also still feeling quite abstract. And I'm putting some land mass in the foreground, and that's just going to be a few blocks, a few shapes and blocks of colour. And I was really happy with how this painting turned out. I did use quite bright colours, so I think moving forward I might try to do a version where the colours aren't quite so bright. But what I'm always trying to do with my watercolours is to sort of retain that spontaneous, free feel, but to also end up feeling like I've got a painting that feels really finished, like it could be, framed and put on a wall. So to do that, I quite often start my paintings off quite light, and then at the end I add a bit of detail and a bit of texture to the paint. And I think it's adding this detail and the texture to the paint that can make the painting feel a bit more finished than it might do if you didn't use these strategies at the end. But I would be really interested if you've tried painting trees in your landscapes, how you do that, and if you're trying to make them feel quite abstract like I am, I'd be interested if you've got any strategies for that. And in September I moved back to the south of England, and I'm just absolutely surrounded by trees, and I think that's where this feeling that I want to incorporate some trees into some of my landscape comes from. I live really near to a botanical garden, and I think we're really influenced by our surroundings. Even when we're painting landscapes abstractly, I think we're always getting our ideas from our surroundings, and I'm not painting any particular view, but I'm definitely influenced by it. Okay, so I'm going to put the music up for a bit while I finish this painting, and then I'll jump in again at the end. Okay, so I stood back from this painting and I decided that it needed some darker tones. So what I did here was I actually added a bit of a medium called aqua pasto to my olive green, and then I wet the paper so that I would get a bit of a blurred edge, and I'm just putting that on top there. And I'm using the acrylic brush for this because the aqua pasto is not that good for the watercolour brushes, although I think at times I do sometimes add it with the watercolour brush when I forget, but it's a good tip to use a stiffer brush if you are going to use aqua pasto. And I was just able to score in some marks into the surface of this tree, which just gave it a bit more texture. So at this point I decided that I was going to crop this painting further, because I wasn't completely convinced by what was going on the right hand side, and I wanted to have a bit more focus on this area on the left, but I also decided to make quite a bold move and add a really big tree to the background. So I'm just re-wetting the paper there because I want the edge to be blurred, and I'm using this amazing colour that I found from Schminke, and it's Tundra Blue, and it's a granulating paint. And I really love this colour. It's a sort of blacky blue colour. So it's definitely got a bit too much white in the sky. So that's why I'm doing this. And also just to add a bigger shape so that I've got a contrast between the smaller trees and then one, much bigger shape. I always find that adding contrast in my paintings can help to sort of elevate them and make them look more interesting. Now, it's always a bit nerve-wracking with watercolour because it can be difficult to rectify your mistakes if you do things you don't like, but I was really happy with this move. And it also added a sort of, further abstraction, I think, by adding this fairly, abstract tree-like form. So I was pretty happy with this painting. It's definitely given me some ideas of things I can incorporate into further paintings, and I think once I've finished it off it might make a nice little finish painting. I really hope it's been interesting for you, maybe given you some ideas about how you might incorporate trees into your paintings, or maybe you've got your own ideas about how you do that, and I'd be interested to hear about them in the comments. I'd say this painting is slightly brighter than some of my other paintings. But I do seem to go between more sort of moody colours and brighter colours. If you're interested in semi-abstract landscapes, check out some of my other videos. And if you like the video, please hit like. And if you'd like to see similar videos in the future, then please consider subscribing to my channel. Okay, thank you. Bye.